Peace and blessings to all of God's people. Man, I got to tell you about these two brothers I met in federal prison system from Israel. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. Federal prison system, you're always moving around, so I heard over here, talking about, man, two brothers here, we had them out of Israel, this and that. And the thought to me at the time, this is in the 80s and the 90s, was so radical, and I was so programmed into the TV effect when they show Israel, it had never occurred to me, black folks in Israel. Anyway, I met these two brothers. At that particular time, I was wild, off the chain. And got to talking to them, and the brother said, yeah, I said, well, look, bro, I'd like to, if we could, set up a study or something like this here. And he said, brother, let me ask you something. I said, yeah, well, what's the question? He said, did you read the scriptures? I said, yeah, I spent a lot of time in the hole. He said, well, John the Baptist, he said, when you read the scripture, when they say he was eating locusts and honey, you think he was eating bugs? I said, that's what the book said right there. And they broke out laughing. I felt some kind of way about that, because, I'm still young. And I know I haven't mastered, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. And they just had this side splitting. They just laugh and laugh. They said, well, brother, I said, what's so funny, man? He said, if John the Baptist ate locusts, he couldn't eat for every 7 years then, right? Isn't that when locusts, what would he do when they ain't in season, And he said, brother, I'm gonna ask you to go back and look up in the dictionary the word locust. Saw in there about the bugs and everything, but I went down, you got section 1, 2, 3, I think about 2 or 3, and it said a pod-like plant that grew on trees. So John the Baptist wasn't eating bugs; he was eating the locust plant, which they still make a lot of stuff using it, corrode a lot of this stuff from it. But I said, man, and I felt some kind of way about that, because, like I said, I wasn't a good manager of, my reactions. Anyway, we got shipped out for something happened, we didn't meet up together again for several years. And by this time, because of what they did, which was very uncomfortable at the time, it forced me to, go a little bit deeper, and I got into things like etymology and, looking at the historical, cultural, what was, having some, clarifying my vision of what was going on at that time and how is this relatable. And met these brothers, and these brothers shared so much with me. And even though it started off kind of rowdy, it ended up being a beautiful thing. Now, these brothers was born and raised in Jericho. And I told, we eventually got to the point, I said, man, I never even thought about it. Black people in Israel. He said, man, Jericho, one of the oldest cities. He said, black people everywhere there. But I didn't see them on TV. I had a friend of mine, he used to always call the television a tele-live-vision. In other words, it's all an illusion, And older cultures, it's higher wisdom that said that this life that we live is just an illusion. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. But anyway, I said, man, and things started to unravel. And like now, the evidence is everywhere about, the black presidents and this and that and who's. But at that time, this is where I began to start thinking in terms of who are these people in the scripture? You see what I'm saying? And even right now, I say this all the time: see yourself in the scriptures and the scriptures in your life. You know. Now I mean that for everybody, but I tell you something. That journey started then, and it's still unfolding as I speak to you. I pray something comes out of here that will cause you to be a little bit more patient with certain things that you feel uncomfortable with. And no, I'm not telling you to be a masochist and enjoy pain. I'm saying, ask yourself sometime, why is God showing me this? And try to remember, well, God only is going to show it to you, even though it's a little irritable and uncomfortable. Now, remember, a woman got to carry a child for 9 months, but when she had that baby, that love is second only to God's agape love. But try to be a little bit more patient with yourself, because that opened a door for me. Couldn't come from nobody but God. Pray, peace and blessing. Have a blessed day.